point, this business was close to a $200 million business, and
Wow.
now it's about a $75 million business. It just intrigued me. Why is that the case? How could this robust business be where it is today, and how can we take it to the next level?
Well, hey there, and welcome to a brand new episode of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and joining me today is a returning rock star, and I'm super excited to dive into the topic today. He's the co-CEO of Myron and an investor as well. Jeff Lederer, welcome back to Delivering Marketing Joy, man.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Cool. So I got the opportunity to listen to the ASI interview with Chris Ruvo, and that was really cool. But for those who didn't, for those who've been living under a rock and didn't know, you're back in the industry with Myron. So can you tell us how that came to be and what brought you back to promo and the marketing space?
Well, somehow promo keeps drawing me back in. And, it's been 3 years since I left Prime and Alpha Broder. I sold the business in 2017, stayed there for 3 years. And then for the last 2.5 years, was just looking for different opportunities in and around the industry, outside of the industry. And I invested in a business called Premium Square in Europe. So it's a supplier business in Europe. And I continued to just try to look for opportunities. And this opportunity for Myron came up, and I was intrigued by the opportunity. I was intrigued by what we could do with the business, how we could turn it around, and really have it as this clay that we could mold into what would be really an interesting business.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've seen, as I mentioned, other conversations where you talked about turning Myron around. So why do you think why do you think that drew you? Why is that such an interesting challenge for you? And what's most exciting?
I love solving problems. I love bringing people together, putting puzzle pieces together. And sometimes when you can see what the problem is, in a lot of cases, and knowing what the solution is, it's a fun puzzle to solve. And
right.
In this case with Myron, there was some really interesting opportunities. It had a lot of similarities to my old business, Prime, that was on the supplier side of the business. There was a warehouse, production, customer service, order entry, art, supply chain, the whole thing. But I noticed some patterns of things that I knew that I worked on in my business that were successful. Culture was important, bringing people together, communicating well together, having the right software, being forward thinking. And I noticed a few of those things that Myron had broken down, because at one point this business was close to a $200 million business, and
Wow.
now it's about a $75 million business. And it just intrigued me. Why is that the case? How could this robust business be where it is today, and how can we take it to the next level? And there's some great stuff about the business, Myron. And I was able to know that if we put some of the best practices in place, it was something that we could turn around pretty, nothing's easy, but pretty easily.
Yeah.
And use some of the playbook that I had done in the past, my partners have done in the past, and things that work in the business. Put it all together in a focused way, and it seems to be something that we'll be able to make a successful business again.
I totally understand the idea. And I think those of us who are entrepreneurial in nature, solving problems, I mean, that's what you do, right? You started the business to solve a problem. And then one of the things I joke about, Jeff, is that I think people believe that once you're successful, you don't have problems. And it's really the opposite is true. You just get the opportunity to solve bigger and interesting, more interesting problems. So I know it's early in the process, but can you talk about some of the things that you've implemented so far and how they've been received?
Yeah, sure. First of all, we looked at expenses across the organization and realized there's a lot of expenses and legacy services that had been put into place. So the first thing we're looking at is all the expenses in the business to determine what doesn't have to happen. For a $200 million business, or $180 million, or 150 or 100, there's certain infrastructure that's put into place that isn't necessary when you're $75 million and maybe not making the money that we should be making. So the first thing we did is look at the expense structure across the organization, and we're continuing to do this. It's only been about a month,
right?
And we're reducing expenses where we can, where it makes sense. The other thing is we've started to contact any vendors because the payment terms have been pretty long with this business who've had a bit of a shortfall on cash. And so now we're working with those vendors to reassure them that you're going to get paid. We just need a little bit more time behind us as we turn this business around. So we've worked on that. We've also looked at some of the reasons why the sales have declined a bit. There was a model of doing mailings and acquiring customers a certain way. And so we're looking at exactly how to do that. We've made those changes in some cases, but it's a work in progress, but to drive more revenue in a more efficient way. And so we're putting some of those best practices into place. We just renewed our focus on our ERP and trying to convert that over because it's kind of half implemented right now, and we're moving forward with that. So we're looking at all aspects of the business, including expanding out the different vendor base that we're working with and working with tighter with dropship vendors and suppliers. Some of my old business and competitors, my old business, and focusing on ways to expand out the product range for the dropship side of things, as well as what we inventory and print in our own facilities. So a lot packed into the last month, but we're in a rush to make this happen. I'm a little bit older these days and don't have the same patience I have, waiting 5 or 10 or 15 years to, I want to get this thing immediately turned around and make a pretty quick impact to this business.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'm just curious, like Myron has been a different business model than the traditional distributorship, right? So what's that mix of traditional distributorship business versus the stuff that Myron actually manufactures?
So whether Myron manufactures it or not, the business itself is such a hybrid, integrated business that there's really maybe 3, 4, or 5 other companies out there like this. And it is not only the manufactured side of things where we import products, put them in our warehouse, imprint them on demand for an end user, but there's also an organization behind it that powers getting the leads, getting the customer acquisition. We've got a team of salespeople all over the world, Toronto, Germany, Honduras, focused on driving opportunity. And so it's that engine that's different than a typical distributor model. We also have within this hierarchy a pure sort of distributor play going after more corporate accounts. But I think the fact that we have this integrated model where we can do different services within our footprint, whether it's packaging, printing, fulfillment, warehousing, as well as servicing on a sales side and the supply chain side, we're a really interesting model in the sense that not only could we sell to the end user, but maybe some distributors who need some of those services, both domestically here in the States, but also in Europe, we can help service them as well and not be the typical distributor or supplier, because we're not going to be that basic and typical company because of how integrated we are.
That's really interesting, Jeff. I appreciate you diving into that. Final question for you. As you grab your crystal ball, right? What are some predictions you have for 2024 and beyond? With Myron, with the industry, whatever. Sometimes I know that sometimes it's such a tough question, but I'm curious to see what your vision is for the industry moving forward.
Yeah, I think there's going to be on the quote distributor side, the end user side of the business, there's going to be these integrated models like I've mentioned a few times, where you have different products and services that you can offer in a pretty unique way to the end customer. And I think we're positioned to be able to do that. You're also going to have the supplier side of the business because it's necessary, but you'll see more integration of those supplier businesses as we're starting to see now. Some of the larger players need to continue to grow, and the way to grow is by larger companies. There's not a big universe of companies these days to acquire between, I don't know, $30 and $100 million on the supplier side, just a small universe. Therefore, in order to scale the business to get up to the $500, $600 billion supplier side of the business, there's going to have to be a ton of roll up or integrated in a different way. So that's going to continue to scale, but it doesn't have a huge amount to scale because there's only a few large players unless those players start to merge, right? And then you have these mega suppliers, right?
Yeah.
That's the side. On the distributor side, you're going to see lots of companies offering different services that are going to be unique, and it's not going to be one shoe fits all. And I think that's how we're going to see it, but you're still going to see the distributor, supplier, and user model in so many ways.
Yeah, that kind of fits in with what I continue to envision as well, Jeff. So I appreciate your perspective on this. Well, I'll tell you, this is really interesting. I loved your interview with Chris, and I'm super excited to kind of continue to connect and kind of see what you do with Myron. I'm really curious about it. So I appreciate you taking a minute to talk to me.
My pleasure. Looking forward to connecting again, and excited to be back in the industry and focusing on building a new mousetrap.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll do it again sometime. That's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy, bud. We'll see you next time.